Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. You're listening to the RX Daily Dose. Today's episode is being recorded for Monday, November 23rd, and I'm your host, Ian Parnagoni. We update this podcast for healthcare providers, medical professionals, and anyone who has an interest in drug updates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms and social media, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. All links can be found in the show notes below. In today's episode, we'll discuss the approval of Zokinvy for Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome and an emergency use authorization for Banlamivimab, a monoclonal antibody treatment for COVID-19. As always, feel free to skip around. I'm going to include times in the show notes so you get the drugs that interest you. First up this week, the FDA approved lonafarnib, which goes by brand name Zokinvy, to reduce the risk of death due to Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome, and for the treatment of certain processing-deficient progeroid laminopathies in patients 1 year of age and older. Zokinvy is not approved for use in patients with other progeroid syndromes or laminopathies. Patients with Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome and progeroid laminopathies experience an accelerated cardiovascular disease from the buildup of defective progerin or progerin-like protein in cells. Most patients die before the age of 15 years from heart failure, heart attack, or stroke. Before today's approval, the only treatment options included supportive care and therapies directed towards the complications arising from the disease. Zokinvy is an oral farnesyltransferase inhibitor that helps prevent the buildup of defective progerin or progerin-like protein. The effectiveness of Zokinvy for the treatment of Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome was demonstrated in 62 patients from 2 single-arm trials that were compared to matched untreated patients from a separate natural history study. Compared to untreated patients, the lifespan of Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome patients treated with Zokinvy increased by an average of 3 months through the first 3 years of treatment, and by an average of 2.5 years through the maximum follow-up time of 11 years. Zokinvy's approval for the treatment of certain processing-deficient progeroid laminopathies that are very rare took into account similarities in the underlying genetic mechanism of disease and other available data. The most common side effects included nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, infection, decreased appetite, and fatigue. Zokinvy is also contraindicated for co-administration with strong or moderate CYP3A inhibitors and inducers, as well as midazolam and certain cholesterol-lowering medications. Some patients treated with Zokinvy developed lab test abnormalities, such as changes in blood sodium and potassium levels, lowered white blood cell counts, and increased liver blood tests. Routine blood lab testing should be obtained periodically. Eye toxicity was seen in animals, so eye exams are recommended periodically and if there are new visual changes. The FDA granted this application priority review designation, and it also received orphan drug designation, which provides incentives to assist and encourage the development of drugs for rare diseases, as well as breakthrough therapy designation. In addition, the manufacturer received a rare pediatric disease priority review voucher. This voucher program is intended to encourage the development of new drugs and biologics to prevent and treat rare diseases in children. The FDA granted the approval of Zokinvy to Eiger Biopharmaceuticals. And last this week, the FDA issued an emergency use authorization for the investigational monoclonal antibody therapy Banlamivimab for the treatment of mild to moderate COVID-19 in adult and pediatric patients. Banlamivimab is authorized for patients with positive results of direct SARS-CoV-2 viral testing who are 12 years of age and older, weighing at least 40 kilograms, and who are at high risk for progressing to severe COVID-19 and or hospitalization. This includes those who are 65 years of age and older or who have certain chronic medical conditions. While the safety and effectiveness of this investigational therapy continues to be evaluated, Banlamivimab was shown in clinical trials to reduce COVID-19 related hospitalization or emergency room visits in patients at high risk for disease progression within 28 days after treatment when compared to placebo. Banlamivimab is not authorized for patients who are hospitalized due to COVID-19 or require oxygen therapy due to COVID-19. A benefit of Banlamivimab treatment has not been shown in patients hospitalized due to COVID-19. Monoclonal antibodies such as Banlamivimab may be associated with worse clinical outcomes when administered to hospitalized patients with COVID-19 requiring high-flow oxygen or mechanical ventilation. Monoclonal antibodies are lab-made proteins that mimic the immune system's ability to fight off harmful antigens such as viruses. Banlamivimab is a monoclonal antibody that is specifically directed against the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2, designed to block the virus's attachment and entry into human cells. The issuance of the EUA is different than FDA approval. In determining whether to issue an EUA, the FDA evaluates the available evidence and carefully balances any known or potential risks with any known or potential benefits of the product for use during an emergency. Based on the FDA's review of the totality of scientific evidence available, the agency determined that it is reasonable to believe that Banlamivimab may be effective in treating non-hospitalized patients with mild or moderate COVID-19, and when used to treat COVID-19 for the authorized population, the known and potential benefits outweigh the known and potential risks for the drug. There are no adequate, approved, and available alternative treatments to Banlamivimab for the authorized population. As part of the evaluation of the EUA, the agency imposed several quality measures to protect patients. The company is required to implement these quality measures to manufacture this drug under the EUA. The data supporting this EUA for Banlamivimab are based on an interim analysis from a Phase 2 randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial in 465 non-hospitalized adult patients with mild to moderate COVID-19 symptoms. Of these patients, 101 received a 700 mg dose of Banlamivimab. 107 received a 2,800 mg dose, 101 received a 7,000 mg dose, and 156 received a placebo within 3 days of obtaining the clinical sample for the first positive SARS-CoV-2 viral test. The pre-specified primary endpoint in the Phase 2 trial was change in viral load from baseline at day 11 for Banlamivimab versus placebo. Most patients, including those receiving placebo, cleared the virus by day 11. However, the most important evidence that Banlamivimab may be effective came from the predefined secondary endpoint of COVID-19 related hospitalizations or emergency room visits within 28 days after treatment. For patients at high risk for disease progression, hospitalizations and emergency room visits occurred in 3% of Banlamivimab-treated patients on average, compared to 10% in placebo-treated patients. The effects on viral load and on reduction in hospitalizations and ER visits and on safety were similar in patients receiving any of the 3 Banlamivimab doses. The EUA allows for Banlamivimab to be distributed and administered as a single dose IV by healthcare providers. The EUA requires that fact sheets that provide important information about Banlamivimab in treating COVID-19 be made available to healthcare providers and to patients and caregivers, including dose instructions, potential side effects, and drug interactions. Possible side effects of Banlamivimab include anaphylaxis and infusion-related reactions, nausea, diarrhea, dizziness, headache, itching, and vomiting. The EUA was issued to Eli Lilly and Company. And that's all I have for right now. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll include all links in the show notes below, so please go back and check those out too. Please connect with me on any of your social media platforms and give me feedback on what you heard today. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.